And a lot of people get demotivated to start companies because they immediately think it's about the money. And you kind of whittle away and you tinker and you try to figure out how to monetize everything that you're doing and different ways to sell. And that's one of those things where you have to just focus on what's in front of you and just continue to go. Starting your own company is one of those things where you're gonna find yourself sitting there demotivated, thinking, where did I go wrong? Why am I not making money? And then the next month you're like, yes, this is great, I'm making lots of money. So it's a real emotional roller coaster. And that's part of being in your comfort zone, is that there's a cool guy who came to Northeastern. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. His name is Bob Bozeman. He was one of the initial investors in Google. And he said something that really stuck in my head. And I was already familiar with the concept, but I never had a word for it. It was the comfort zone. And he said, never be in your comfort zone. You should just continue to push out of it. If you find yourself comfortable with the amount of emails in your inbox, if you find that you're happy with the amount of money in your bank account, then something must be wrong. If you're in the startup environment, continue to push, continue to meet new people. And one of the biggest things that I've pushed myself out of my comfort zone is continually trying to meet people that are outside of my league and reach up and try and connect and try and network. And the more you can network, the more you can build the expansion of your company indirectly, because you find people that they might not necessarily be valuable to you directly, but they have an entire group of people, and the more that they feel your cause, and especially as students, if you are a student and an entrepreneur and you have your own company, they are more willing to take you under their wing and try and help you. And I have that a very short time of being a student, so I have to take advantage of that. But for the most part, it's scary to be outside your comfort zone, because you never know if you're going to fall, and you never know if when you fall, if you're going to really fall back into that comfort zone. But I try to continually break out of it, and that's one of the problems, is balance. And with school, with trying to balance your bank account, with the company, with social life, girlfriends, friends, and with family, it's what's the trade-off? And the terrible part is that lots of times the thing that's most important to you, you don't actually get around to your biggest priority. You're not able to spend time with, because you're off doing something that you have to do with the company or you have to do for school. So there's a cool book that I'm in the process of reading. There's one of the guys I met in Chicago, one of the judges. His name is Peter Thomas, and Northeastern might actually start his program. It's called Life Pilot, and it's all about assessing what your values are and trying to figure out if your daily activities are actually aligned with your values. And I think that if more people who started companies, and if more people who are even involved in working full-time in companies were to look at, what am I doing day to day? Where do I spend 90% of my time? And is that at all aligned with what I want to be doing, or is it helping me get where I want to go? People might start to kind of shift themselves around. It's hard not to lie to yourself too. I spend a lot of my day being distracted by emails. A lot of the emails I get distracted by are chains, and they don't really help me focus on profitability or selling more or whatnot. But it's something that happens, and so you try to change the way you live your life so that you can accomplish your values. But there's a lot of, reading books is great, but there's also a lot of advice that people will throw at you that's relatively worthless, and especially when you start to network and you start to bring other people in. My first piece of advice is always, don't take anybody's advice. And I don't mean that by don't really take their advice, but just take it with a grain of salt, because everybody wants to put their 2 cents in. Everybody wants to listen to what you have to say and wants to say, oh, well, I don't think you're going to make it unless you do this. Or, oh, this is what you should do. You should change your business model. You shouldn't do laundry and dry cleaning. You should just franchise. And it's hard not to take that to heart when, these are people who are successful, and they're looked at as business icons. But the problem is that they haven't sat in the seat that you're sitting in directly. They've sat in that seat, but not for your company. And so they don't necessarily see the same road that you see. So a little bit of advice that on that side, don't listen to my advice, but a little bit of advice that I have in starting a company is that strategy is very important. You should always know your strategy. But one of the problems I've noticed in school is that they tend to teach you to over-strategize. And they tend to teach you, how am I going, what's the analysis on this, and how am I going to get this multiplier, and how am I going to build my channel? And that's, all those MBA words are really important, but if you're not selling, and it's whether that's selling to investors, whether that's selling to customers, or selling a dream to your potential people around you, you're not going to get to the next step, because if you don't have any money or emotion in your company, it's very hard to move beyond that. The next piece is to continually motivate, and this goes primarily with staffing. And unless you're willing to give equity to everybody in your company, and like a lot of companies have, that's one reason why ESOP is such a valuable corporate form, like FedEx, for example. But unless you're willing to do that at a very small level, it's hard to bring on people that have the same drive that you do. And just because they don't have the same drive, and they're not willing to work the 14-hour days, and they're not willing to sacrifice their family time, doesn't mean that they're bad hires. It doesn't mean that they're not, not up to par, but it's your job to kind of assess and let people know what's expected of them, and that they can actually accomplish that. So money is a motivator. If you listen to Jack Welch, he says money is the only motivator. But in a big organization, that might be the way it is. But in a small organization, a lot of people like to share the vision, they like to share the dream. And if you do make a bad hire, there is never a better time than to fire somebody than right now, because the longer they stay in your company, the more damage they'll do to your brand. And it's really complicated. It's really hard when you hire somebody and you spend 3 months training them just to find out that now it was really just kind of a facade they put on, and they're really not a good employee, because you think, oh, I've lost so much time. But it's that sunk cost theory. I guess some MBA terms do make sense, right? But it's that if you've put that much into somebody, it's hard to cut the strings. But the next time around, the next hire, it will take you half as long to train somebody because you've built a system. And so system building is really, really important in your company. It's really easy to have this mentality of, oh, it's easier for me to do it. I built a system. I figured out how a process should be done. In order for me to train somebody how to do it, it's going to take so much time. But that system of checks and balances, or that hierarchy that you're able to monitor and look down upon, is really, really important. So delegation is a very difficult task, because it's almost a full-time job to keep up with what you've assigned. And there's a lot of electronic systems out there that try and do it for you. We've tried to build our own. Kind of felt like we were over-engineering ourselves.